The year was 1923. Calvin Coolidge was sworn in as president on August 4th after the untimely death of President Warren G. Harding. The first issue of Time magazine was released on March 2nd. Yankee Stadium opened its doors for the first time on April 18th. And later that year, the Yankees celebrated by winning the first of their 27 World Championships. The top movie of the year was The Hunchback of Notre Dame, starring Lon Chaney. A loaf of unsliced bread cost 9 cents, while a new Model T went for $525, and you could get it in any color, as long as that color was black. Gasoline was 29 cents a gallon. You could buy an unassembled kit house from a Sears and Roebuck catalog for under $1,000. The typical American worker made 54 cents an hour, or about $1,100 per year.
Sunday morning, 10 to 10 on 9923. And that is 91 3/4 years ago. My parents were Ethel and Jack Wennerstrom. My mother was Ethel Lorman. Her parents were, her mother was from Sweden and her father was from St. Cloud, Minnesota. She couldn't speak English. And so the woman there taught her English with her child's first grade books that she had. And then while she was up there, she met my grandfather, and they didn't want to stay up north. It was different weather, so they came down to Chicago. And my dad had a sister, and she died, I don't know, I forget now if it was TB or diphtheria, when she was 18 years old. I had a brother, no sisters. His name is Jack, 4 years older than I am. He was the treasurer for A.C.L. Nielsen, international treasurer. Born in Chicago on Mason Avenue, just north of, a block and a half north of North Avenue, that was called Austin at that time. Then we lived there for about a year and a half. And we moved to where my grandparents, my dad's parents, had a 2-flat, and we lived in the second floor of the 2-flat. My grandmother had arthritis severely, and she was bedridden, and so my mother would go down and kind of take care of her, I guess, during the day a little bit. And we lived there for about a year or 2 years the most. So my folks could save money to buy a car. They wanted to buy a car, and so during that period they were able to do that. And then they went out looking for a home, and they ended up around Diversity and Central. There was a new development in there with Chicago bungalows. They were putting in the brick Chicago bungalows. And so they ended up buying a Chicago bungalow then. And we lived there for 18 years. Then they didn't have electric lights, street lights at that time, so they had gas lights. So there was this little, he looked like a little Italian man, and he had a bicycle with a very small ladder, and he would come down the street. You'd see him at night. I didn't see him in the morning, twice a day, but at night he'd come down, and evidently there was a key there that he would turn on each of these lanterns and street lights and take the flame up. It was a gas light. And then in the morning he would have to come around and lower it, until then. I don't know, that lasted a few years, and then they put in electric street lights. But my dad worked for the Western Electric at 22nd and Cicero there. He worked in the office. He worked, what I heard was the foreign department, so orders, and at that time they're putting up a lot of telephone wires and things around. It was after the war, and a lot of damage and stuff, so I guess they were busy. He only went, I don't know, 6th, 7th grade, something like that. My mother graduated grammar school. She didn't graduate high school, but she graduated grammar school. Went to Schubert School. When schools, I didn't go to kindergarten because they didn't have, they were building the school and they didn't have kindergarten then. So I went to first grade. They had portables and for the different classes. And this one day they came in and said, "Everybody line up. We're going to the new school." We all marched into the brand new school. It was nice. And then I went to high school, Foreman High School. School had been built in about 1920 something, so it was fairly new. It wasn't a strict high school. I felt sorry for anybody going on to college. I don't think they got a good basic foundation for college there, but it worked out fine. I took commercial geography in high school. And naturally, who wants to study the maps? That's not too interesting. So obviously I didn't study too well. And so every day or a couple of days a week, we'd have tests, and I didn't study, I didn't do homework, so I wasn't doing too good in the tests. So when marks came out, she handed me a failure notice. So I said, "Oh my goodness, I never failed anything. I can't bring home a failure." And so she said, "Well, this is what you deserve." And I said, "Oh, I just can't bring home a failure." So she said, "Well, I can't do anything about it." So when the books, we had books for each year in high school that we kept a record of marks. And when the books came back, I looked and she gave me a red 75, which was, So I went up and I thanked her, and she said, "I didn't give that to you." She said, "You better show me that you earned it." "Oh, I will. So I studied. Each time we would have these tests with black maps and then numbers on it for cities and countries and towns and lakes and rivers and whatever. And if you missed, it was about 125 questions or so on the test. And if you would miss less than 10, a couple of times she did it, an ice cream bar or a candy bar or something. Well, I'm eating ice cream bars and candy bars. So at the end of the semester, I got at that time you got the G's, I guess, instead of a B, C. It would be equivalent to a C. And she called me over and she said, "You actually deserved a B or B plus," but she said, "I can't go from a red 75 to a B." She said, and I said, "Well, I appreciated what she did, and that was okay." But that, I remember her very well.
What was her name?
Miss Anderson.
Miss Anderson. Did you have a best friend in high school?
Yeah, I did. Well, you have a couple, for a while you have the one and for certain things, and then you develop another one you meet in another class and for certain things. And so there were several that you were more friendly with than others, but closer to two of them, I guess. So the one her folks had a summer cottage up at Williams Bay, and so we'd go up there. I was about a junior, I guess, at that time, and we'd go up there for weekends and everything. One time we were up there Memorial Day, and we wore our jackets down. They had a bathhouse. It was a public pier. And we wore our jackets down to the bathhouse. Of course, nobody was around. It was cool. And so I don't remember if we brought our suits with us. I doubt that we had them on. But anyway, we went in the bathhouse and got ready to go. Came out. It was cold, so ran down the pier like mad. Dove into the water, and it was like ice. Oh, talk about body shock. came up, am I still alive? Got out of there. When I got up on the pier, it felt like we were having a heat wave. The difference of the cold of the water and the air, felt so warm. It was unreal. It was absolutely unreal.
You remember any of the name of that person?
Yeah, Merneth Bjerke. Her last name was Bjerke, Bjerke, and all the teachers would call her Bjerk. And she'd stand up and say, "It's Bjerke." It didn't affect me at all, other than knowing, that other people were affected. One of the teachers, she wore the same dress every day. Actually, we were very fortunate because my dad didn't lose his job. He got cut back in hours, I know, and things like that. But however, my mother worked around it with food. You never noticed it on the table or any. Every year we took vacations. Western Electric closed down for practically the whole month. And for 2 weeks anyway, we'd go away. At the end, he was getting 3-week vacations, and we would go up into Wisconsin, and not knowing where we were going. And you could tell Hayes, there's a lake over there, and go into this town and ask if in the drugstore or whatever, if they knew of any rentals, cottage rentals. Oh yeah, so and so, and then you'd go and look at the cottage, and you'd stay there with the ice box and the outside pump and outhouse and everything. But so probably, it just cost a little more to do that than if you stayed at home. My folks would bring food, cans of lunch meat and stuff that would come in a can, and we'd have that, a lot of sandwiches and things. And if we were lucky, my brother and I would go fishing and get a few fish. And so actually, fortunately, the depression, didn't affect us. One friend in particular, why she had it rough because her father was a salesman and he lost his job and had to move in with grandparents, and it was a different life. She had to work in the summer. She was a mother's helper, and to get money. She didn't graduate high school. She quit to go to work to get money, and different, entirely different. We kept active, bicycle riding. Once in a while, you'd go horseback riding, or fill in the time, So we would go to Riverview and on 2-cent day, and I belonged to this club when I was in 7th and 8th grade in grammar school. There were 7 of us that got together once a month at each other's home, and we'd play games. We'd play bingo or whatever the hostess wanted to play. And then once in a while we'd do things together, and Riverview was one of the things we'd like to do. And so for $1, you really had a big day. And so go on the high rides as much as we could, and do a few of the chance games and stuff. Some were ridiculous. I like flying turns. That you were in like a bucket and you slid on the side, and that was a fun ride. And the parachute. Boyfriend and I, we went on the parachute. We got close to the top, and all of a sudden we stopped. And I said, "Whoa, I think we're going to be here a while. Might as well enjoy the view."
When you were a kid growing up and like a teenager, did you ever get in trouble for anything?
No, No, of course, so
Did you ever get caught?
bringing home a D.
Oh, that-
Yeah, well, you skip classes and everything. One time we were in the drugstore, this girlfriend and I, we were skipping, I don't know, I think it was study hall, whatever it was, wasn't anything big. And this woman, we're in a booth, and this woman came up and started to talk to us. And so I thought it was somebody waiting for, well, the streetcar ran on Belmont Avenue. And I thought she was waiting for the streetcar and just being friendly. And, oh, are you girls, from Foreman? Oh, yeah, we're from Foreman, and all of a sudden, are you supposed to be in class? And we turned out she was a truant officer. So she said, no sense in you getting into trouble. She said, go back to school and we'll forget about it. So, oh, thank you. So we go back and get in the one door, walk through, go out the back side. But that actually never really got in any trouble. If I guess some of the stuff we did, we were just lucky.
Yeah.
Date night was Wednesday night and Saturday night and sometimes Sunday. And you go to the movies, basically, or you'd go to the Aragon on Saturday night, you go to the Aragon dancing, or sometimes at school, they'd have roller skating nights, and we'd go roller skating, or, whatever activities came up.
What was your favorite radio program?
On Friday night, they used to have different studio ones and things like that, where they would have, stories, and you'd visualize what's going on, and it was a good night.
What was your favorite movie as a teenager?
Well, at the time, it was the first date I ever went on, and Lost Horizon.
On the flying field at Moscow, China, starts the greatest news story since the World War. Here Robert Conway, Great Britain's strong man of the East, soldier, diplomat, and man of destiny, soon to become Prime Minister of 400 million people, superintends the rescue of British subjects from a city torn by civil war. Fighting back the panic-stricken natives, Conway, with 3 other men and a woman, escape in the last plane and fly away into the unknown to disappear from the face of the earth. Into what strange adventure did Great Britain's future Prime Minister and his 4 companions fly as their plane continued over an uncharted course with a mysterious pilot at the controls?
That year, my folks built a summer cottage up at Lake Geneva at a subdivision called Knollwood. So Mom and I went up there because the furniture was being delivered and stuff, and I stayed there for about 2 weeks. I had every intention of staying there the whole summer. Well, not so. The guy next door, he was in employment for W.F. Hall printing company that was on Diversity in Cicero, near Cicero, and he knew about these doctors that needed this secretary, and they had like an insurance office for some of the factories around there, and it was like a clinic, emergency treatments and stuff. So my mother drove me in, and I went in for the interview, and I got the job. They would make up the sheets of with the accident, what happened, and then I had to type up the form and everything, and they had to process it however they did. And so I did that for a while. So then I was there about 4 months, or 3 months maybe, when the doctor dictated his first letter to me, and that was 2 pages of, this is not for me. So I left there the first part of December and went to the bank, Continental Bank downtown, and I worked there until 43, the end of July in 43. Then I stayed at the cottage for a month with my mother, and then after Labor Day, I went downtown and went into the insurance exchange, and they had an employment office there. And I got a job across the street in the Connell Bank building, only up on the 9th floor in the Johnson Higgins Insurance Company. And so then I worked there with the insurance policies and stuff. And I did that until I quit to get married.
How did you meet Ed?
At a dance. It was this boyfriend that I mentioned, Frank. He went into the Merchant Marines, and he and his boyfriend that lived across the street also. They both lived across the street and a few houses apart. And they went into the Merchant Marines together, and they left around the end of September. And so my girlfriend and I, what to do, and we'd go to the movies and stuff. And so she said, well, downtown, she said, Medina has on Sunday night open, stag dancing, and why don't we do that? And I said, I don't like going stag like that. And she said, well, what else is there to do? We can try it once. And I said, well, okay, why not? So we went down there, and we met and spent the whole night together just talking. And then when I was leaving, he wanted my phone number, and he said, where do you live? And I said, Diversity and Central. And he said, really? He said, I live at Belmont and Central. Now here, it's like, we were like 8 blocks apart. Going all the way downtown, how could something like that ever happen? So anyway, that's how we met.
So did you like him when you first met him, or was
Well, it was just, somebody you met and you're talking, and, you're not really thinking. It wasn't love at first sight or
It wasn't love at first sight?
No. And so then, he wanted my phone number, and I said, well, I don't give out my phone number like that. And he said, well, isn't it, coincidental that we're so close and everything? And well, okay. So then he was living with his brother and sister-in-law while he was going to school. He was going to dental school, and he didn't want to sit home. You feel like an outsider, so he didn't want to stay home. So he wanted to be on the go all the time. So, he always had something going on, and he had friends that had cars, and so they were coming in on leave or whatever, and went out almost every night. Actually, enough already. Please, I want to stay home.
And how old were you when you were first met?
19.
How old was he?
25.
Did your parents like him?
Yeah, we had a good time together. I always had good fun. Yeah.
So, how did he propose to you?
He didn't. Just assumed. He's in the service, and you're writing, and it just kind of fell into place. There was really no proposal or anything like that. No engagement period. We got married. He went in the service. He went away after graduation in 44, May of 44, and we got married in September. We got married in Abilene, Texas, because everybody was going away to get married, or the fellows weren't around, and it was silly to have a big wedding and everything at that time. So he said, well, why don't you come here and we'll get married here then? And so that worked out. My mother went with me, and we were only there a month when he got orders to go to Lake Placid, New York, for reassignment, and we were there a year, and that was like being on a vacation for a whole year. It was great. Hey, we kept the Germans out of Lake Placid. That was knew that the attack and everything in Hawaii was, pretty bad, but not to the full extent of all these islands and all the lives that were lost with each island, and horrific, terrible times. But again, the average person, it didn't affect, your life that much, really. Well, things are rationed, but as it turned out, my folks, my sister-in-law opened a dress shop in 1944, in April or so of 1944. And my mother would go and help her. And so at that time, Mom didn't cook that much. She and my dad would go out to eat and things like that. So I don't know. It didn't seem like, my mother did the cooking and everything, and it didn't seem like you knew what you couldn't have, or, minimum whatever. You had a book of stamps, and she just worked with them. There was no problem. Gas, they'd go up to Lake Geneva, for the cottage, and there wasn't a problem there. So actually, we're lucky. Whatever was allowed, we were able to work around it. Gradually, things got rationed. Not right away, but eventually things changed. But it wasn't for that long a period, so it wasn't too bad. This one fellow that I met at a Sweet 16 party at my girlfriend's house, he was in the submarine corps, and when he would come to town, he would ask me to go out with him, and we'd go downtown to the Bismarck Hotel or the Empire Room or something, nice. And he always felt that he wouldn't make it through the war being in the submarine. It was his choice, I guess, to be in the submarine corps, but he didn't think that he would make it through the war. And he was on, so I would write to him. And so he was on the USS Grayback, and they transferred him after a couple of years to another ship, and Whitefish, I think it was, or something. And the next time the Grayback went out, it got sunk. So things that I can remember, I must have been about 2 years old, and we lived in the two-flat with my grandparents on the second floor. And I had a toy, and it was a paper tube, hollow tube, and a balloon at the end of it, and inside was a little metal disc, and when you would blow to blow up the balloon, it didn't make a noise, but then when it exhaled, it would make a noise going through this little disc. Well, as a kid, as what you do, I was blowing it, but I also inhaled, and I got the disc on my throat. So I'm choking to death, and my mother, fortunately, had been downstairs taking care of my grandmother, and she's coming upstairs, and I'm laying on the floor choking when she grabs me. So I remember it happening, but I don't remember all this stuff, she talked about. And she grabbed me by my feet and started swinging me around or shaking me, and anyway, it dislodged. I'm here today. So, and then there's Greenie. We had an ice box in the kitchen of the two-flat. And being a young kid, no more than 3 years old, I dragged a chair over and got up on it so I could reach the top of the ice box where the bird cage was, and opened the door to the bird cage and grabbed Greenie, and oh, Greenie, I love you so much. That was the end of Greenie. So I put Greenie down, closed the door. My mother came in. Greenie won't fly. I don't know if they knew what happened. I never told them what happened. And it was never taught. We buried Greenie. But that was the end of Greenie. Never got another bird. Be careful of her. We had Rex. Oh, he was a nice Boston Bull Terrier. Some Boston Bull Terriers aren't really good looking, but he was a good looking Boston Bull Terrier. And he was a good pet. A girlfriend came over. We had just gotten him. We had him maybe a few months. I think we got him like early in the year, and this was in the summer. And my folks were out. And my folks were out a lot, and they belonged to a club that was active, and my brother was supposed to be babysitting. I was about 8 years old, babysitting, and he was 4 years older. He was out. So anyway, this girlfriend came over on her roller skates, and so she was ready to go home. And as she's putting on her skates, why she realized she didn't have her skate key or something, so she came back in the house, and we didn't have a screen door, so she just left the front door open and forgot about the dog. And she left, and so during the night, my folks woke me up, and they said, "Where's Rex?" And I said, "I don't know. Isn't he in the house? Isn't he here?" "No, he's not in the house." "Oh, he must have gotten out when, Lillian, her name was, opened the door." So early in the morning, walking up and down streets, "Oh, Rex, oh, Rex," which is ridiculous, but anyway, you don't know where to look or where to start looking. And so Mom's riding around in the car, and Dad and I, Jack and I, are walking, and so we get back in the house about 10 o'clock, and my dad said, "Well, why don't you call your friend and see if the dog followed her home?" And she lived about, a good mile away. And I said, "Oh, she doesn't have a phone." And he said, "Well, maybe, go over and ask her." Okay. So we get in the car and we take this street, and instead of turning like I thought he should, we passed the street, and I said, "Well, keep going, it works out just as well." So we got to the corner where there was a vacant lot, and all of a sudden over in the vacant lot were these dogs that were like playing football, all in a pile together. And we stopped and we looked, and they stopped whatever they were doing, and one by one they're dispersing, and at the bottom of the heap is Rex. Now, had we have gone the other way, we never would have found him,
The advice that you would give young people today?
I would say to be honest, to be true to yourself, and to respect yourself. There's no respect anymore. People, they just don't respect anything. They don't respect their neighbors. They don't respect themselves. It's a shame. It's all lost, and it's not for the better, that's for sure.
So when you look back, if you had to pick out 2 points in your life, what was the best day and what was the worst day?
Well, Scott's was the worst day, but the best day, birth of the boys, you can't beat that. The surprise with the twins, they were a complete surprise. Doctor didn't predict, and I kidded about it, but my joke backfired because Dane was only a year and a half, but it worked out beautifully, and those were the highlights, really. Getting married, that changes your life.
And nothing through all the years, you say, if I could really do that over, I'd rather have done this or could have done that.
I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate with friends. I was very fortunate with situations. I was very fortunate being at the right place at the right time. And I just was a very lucky person looking back. I think I got the fullest out of everything that I went through.
Continue our talk about the Cubbies.
Yes.
Important thing first. How did you really become a Cubs fan? What you said you started watching in the '80s, but why were you a Cubs fan when you were a kid growing up, or?
No, I never was a Cubs fan. I never paid any attention to the sports like that. But all of a sudden, I guess I had free time and something to watch was on in the afternoon a lot, so you'd watch it and got to know the players and paid attention and just stayed with them, I guess, through thick and thin.
It gets in your blood.
Yes.
They got the power, they got the speed.